I first found out about Watchmen 10 years ago when the film came out. I got the graphic novel not long after, and then I didn't think much of the series until I heard that HBO was developing it into a show. Now this series has a ton of symbolism, and for this particular video, I'm going to present a theory to you that the comedian is actually based on a major figure in American history. So hit like and subscribe, and if this video gets enough response, I will make more about the deeper meanings of the series, including the show. So let's get started. One of the clues to the actual identity of the comedian lies in the fact that the story is presented as an alternate history where Nixon was re-elected multiple times. In the series, we see this continuity when the police raid over a poor area called Nixonville, which is a small historic nod to the Hoovervilles of the Great Depression. And as the actual Watchmen series opened, we saw an intense scene where the comedian, who was named Edward Blake in the series, was thrown from an apartment building window to his death. And in the comic, investigators come to the crime scene and they happen to find a picture of the comedian in the apartment standing next to Gerald Ford and shaking his hand. And if you don't know, Gerald Ford was Richard Nixon's vice president. In the movie, however, it's clear that we can see Nixon in the photo, and this connection just might be ample evidence to argue the comedian is actually based off of a man named Frank Sturgis. Not only does Sturgis physically resemble the comedian, from everything with his hairstyle, the mustache, the physical build. I mean, Frank Sturgis was a boxer, he was a real tough guy, just like the comedian. But both of these guys have alleged connections that make them almost a perfect fit. For example, in the opening credits of the movie, we see Kennedy's head get blown off, and then we see the comedian as the apparent shooter on the grassy knoll. In the comic, we see the comedian at a social event jokingly explaining that you shouldn't ask him where he was when he heard about JFK. Similarly, Frank Sturgis is alleged to have been in Dallas on the day John F. Kennedy was killed. He's alleged to have met with Lee Harvey Oswald in Miami before the assassination, and he's also claimed to have made several attempts on Castro's life. I mean, it's pretty clear that this guy was a hitman for the CIA. He's admitted as much. Sturgis was also part of a CIA program called Operation 40, which was a group formed out of Cuban exiles with the purpose of taking control of Cuba after the Bay of Pigs invasion. This counterintelligence operation was presided over by the then Vice President, Richard Nixon. Again, the same guy that the comedian was photographed with in the movie Shaking Hands. Sturgis had motive to kill John F. Kennedy because he lost many friends in the Bay of Pigs invasion that John F. Kennedy actually botched. And we've actually seen video footage of Sturgis talking about being very upset over the fact that he lost several friends who were either killed or captured in the Bay of Pigs invasion. The next connection is that during the same scene in the comic that the comedian references JFK, he also references killing Woodward and Bernstein. These are the reporters who uncovered the Watergate scandal. And in real life, Frank Sturgis was one of the 5 men arrested in the Watergate conspiracy. You can actually see Sturgis's picture in the center of this lineup. And there have been books written about this guy. For example, the book portraying him as a hero in the top right corner, it's called Warrior. And it says Frank Sturgis, the CIA's #1 assassin spy who nearly killed Castro but was ambushed by Watergate. In addition, we have another man named E. Howard Hunt who was involved with the CIA, and on his deathbed he gave a taped interview where he confessed to having been involved in the JFK assassination with the likes of Frank Sturgis. So it's not just 1 or 2 people saying that Frank Sturgis was involved with JFK. It's Many of the things that Sturgis did over the years, many of the connections that he made, it all points to him having been involved. Next, we see that the comedian was the only person allowed to maintain his status after the government passed a bill to outlaw vigilantes in the novel Watchmen. We also see that the comedian helped resolve the Iranian hostage crisis, which was something that Reagan did when he was elected. So we know that this man was an important operator for the government, otherwise he wouldn't have been continued to operate as a vigilante. This connection to Sturgis becomes completely obvious when you do some digging and realize that Sturgis has an FBI file over 75,000 pages long. Now, if you look into his record, he actually has 75,253 pages in his FBI file. That's more than 4 times as long as the FBI file on Watergate, and almost twice as long as the combined Watergate and Kennedy assassination FBI files. Most of these pages have never been released, and if they were released, it was in a highly redacted form. The file covers his paramilitary activities in Cuba, his ties to assassins and assassination plots, accusations about involvement in the Kennedy assassination and meeting with Lee Harvey Oswald, his confirmed CIA employment, his involvement in the break-in of the Chilean embassy, and possibly much more. And over the years, the CIA has denied that he was ever employed by the agency, but several documents have surfaced that contradict that statement. Sturgis's career actually started in Cuba before Castro came to power. He actually was an ally to the Castros at first, and he was a paramilitary who fought the government and made friends with several other Cuban paramilitaries. By 1961, he became opposed to Castro, and he started to link up with the Americans and helping them plan for the Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, this is all denied by the CIA, but there are so many papers tied to him, and he has so many connections to Iran-Contra scandal, Republicans, candidates for president, Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, all the indicators are there. There's one woman named Marita Lawrence. She was a CIA agent who said that she had gone to Dallas as part of an operation including Frank Sturgis and Howard Hunt, along with several other Cubans. There they allegedly met with Lee Harvey Oswald just before the JFK assassination. The House Select Committee on Assassinations rejected this, but not before former CIA employee Victor Marchetti claimed that the HSCA had come into possession of a 1966 CIA memo stating that Hunt was in Dallas when Kennedy was killed. So the comedian and Sturgis are both what we call mercenaries or soldiers of fortune. The truth is that both of these men were cold-blooded killers, and this was explained flat out by Dr. Manhattan, who described the comedian in Vietnam and said that the comedian suits the climate there, the madness, the pointless butchery. He realized things that few other people could realize, that sometimes people had to get killed. So in the end, we find that the comedian was actually killed because he had uncovered a conspiracy that was being done by Ozymandias or Adrian Veidt. And it turns out that Ozymandias was planning to fake an alien invasion to prevent war between the Russians and the Americans and bring a united world government. The comedian discovered these plans and stood as a major obstacle to Veidt. So maybe the deeper meaning is that the comedian and Dr. Manhattan represent a new world order created out of power and violence. Dr. Manhattan represents the bomb. It has the power to unite the world, but it leaves the world less safe. It leaves us in the shadow of a nuclear threat. Ozymandias' plan to unite the world governments by faking an alien invasion is an idea that the powers that be have been working on for some time. Ronald Reagan mentioned it multiple times, and if you research Project Bluebeam, you can learn more about that. You see, the United States actually created the United Nations, which is the world government. And the comedian and Sturgis both represent men who killed for the American empire, only to realize that America would sell its sovereignty in exchange for a world government. They represent a new world order that could never be willingly accepted because it could only be created through force. The powers that be want us to embrace a world government and willingly join it. An alien invasion, real or faked, might be the only way. And in a time where fake alien bullshit is all over the place, I mean, you got ancient aliens, all these UFO hunters, without a real single shred of evidence behind anything that they're saying, convincing people that aliens are real. I mean, there really is an agenda. And this means that Watchmen, and especially the comedian, might be more important now than ever.